the cooperative extension program at Tennessee State University. And Dr. Lyles, before we had our break, you were telling us about your background and your education and some of the things that were important in your career leading you to the administrator of the extension cooperative program at Tennessee State University. But let's talk about that program. Let's have you to give our audience some information about the extension program itself and where it fits into the overall effort on the part of the Department of Agriculture to deal with institutions like Tennessee State University.
Well, for it to have significance and make sense, we need to understand the three major things that brought about the formation of Tennessee State University. In 1862, the Morrill Act was passed by Congress, which basically said that we're going to set aside a certain amount of property in each state for the education of the disenfranchised. Each state in the country will have this property that they could do what they so will with, as long as it's for the education of the disenfranchised. And they specified in that legislature that it would be for agriculture and the mechanical arts. And most of the institutions, land-grant institutions, when it was first formed, carried the title of agricultural A&M. And you've heard that across the country. The second Morrill Act, because in the 17 southern states where the second Morrill Act applied to, set that additional property aside for the historical black institutions. And mainly because the blacks in those 17 southern states were not being included in the legislature that had created the 1862s. In the Midwest and the West and other parts of the country, that was not the case. So therein, in the 17 southern states, we have two land-grant institutions. So you need to understand the significance of why we have two, and why is it only in the southern states, 17 southern states. Actually, it's 14 southern states and 3 other states that are not considered part of the South: Delaware, Maryland, and Missouri, which would be considered part of the Midwest. Once we've understood and understand that, then the second part of that legislature that was passed is called the Hatch Act. They realized for professors to be effective in teaching, they had to have research being generated. The creation of new knowledge is basically what research is. So the Hatch Act created the agricultural experimentation, or research part of the legislature. That came about. Now we've got the research being generated. We've got faculty out there teaching new students, but it's all being kept on campus. And Congress, in their wisdom, realized that we needed to get this information to where we do the greatest amount of good to the people. So in 1914, the Cooperative Extension, which is commonly referred to as the Smith-Lever Act, was introduced and passed, which created the Cooperative Extension Program. And that was so that we could get the information disseminated to the people where it was meant to serve. So we have 3 major federal pieces of legislation that create the land-grant institutions. So the total part was not put together into 1914. It was all introduced as the need was saw and the work was done on that. So in their end is this title of land-grant institution, and where it come from. It was actually came from the people being given a parcel of land for education. And we have many faculty who don't understand the significance of the land-grant institution. And I bring that up so we can iterate that. The Cooperative Extension Program, then, main purpose and major mission is to carry research-generated information to the people,
university.
From the outreach of the university, where it do the greatest amount of good. Now, Congress also, because they did have 2 pieces of legislation, the 1862 and 1890 legislature, they also specified what the mission of the 1862 university was versus the mission of the 1890. The mission of the 1862 university actually say that they should be about doing this research, whether it's research, extension, or the teaching, for all of the population in that state. And at 1890, because in many cases 1862 was not following through with their total mission, our main purpose is to do this for a low-income and minority population. And so we have a much more defined mission than 1862.
I think you've also referred to this group as a disadvantaged group.
The disadvantaged group, limited resource. There's much terminology out there that we can use to define these groups. I rather think of more positive terminology, but there's many terminologies. So we have a more defined mission, and because of that, in the state of Tennessee, we focus our program in those counties where we have either a high poverty percentage or either a high minority population. So and most of those people are located in the middle and west Tennessee, a few in the upper east Tennessee. We're currently located in about 14, 15 counties. Now, we have 3 basic programs that we're mandated to carry out. Those are agriculture, We must do work in agriculture. We must do work with limited resource families. We must work with our youth through our 4-H program, and many people are familiar with the 4-H program. And the other part of it that people aren't quite as familiar with is what we call community resource development, where we go in and help low-income communities assess what their strengths and weaknesses are, and then develop action plans to build up the areas that have been shown to be deficit in. So that's our 4 basic programs. We're recently going through a rethinking process at the Extension program. It's one of the things I think many organizations need to do, strategic planning every so often. As a part of that, we are identifying what we call priority programs. We realize that something must always be going on in our major program areas. We can't abandon any of those. But what we need to do is develop some priority programs, some programs that we can do some targeted effort in so that we can show some impact. Because people are beginning to ask, what are you doing with the dollars that you're accountable for? So what difference did it make? So I feel that we at Tennessee State University need to be able to document that we're making a difference, because I know that we're making a difference in lives of people. Because of that, we've identified 5 priority programs that we're going to work on into the 21st century. And at the end of this 5-year cycle that we're going through, we are going to be able to document and demonstrate what impact we've had in these individuals' lives. That because we were involved in our youth, whether it was in the Edge Hill Center, wherever it may have been, we now see youth that are not as many of them are involved in criminal activity. Because we helped some low-income mother balance her budget, she now have the ability to stretch her food dollars until the end of the month. She now has the ability to make sure her kid have the milk that it needs to get them through that cycle. Because this low-income farmer has gone through our program, they now know how to work on a farm management plan. They know how to work in harmony with the environment. So these are some of the things we're looking at in our program, and why our program, I think, is so important in the clientele that we work with.
You know, Dr. Lyles, we are coming up to our second commercial break. And when we come back, we want you to talk about some of the activities in your programs, as well as some of the grants. We also know that since you came to Tennessee State University, that you've been able to attract some great financial support, and et cetera. We want to talk about that, give you an opportunity to talk about those grants, as well as quite recently, I understand you had what was known as a Hall of Fame, and that was inaugurated under your administration. And there's the traditional Farm Home and Ministers Institute that is generally held at Tennessee State University in that program. And we want you to talk about all of those when we come back. And we'll be back with you following this commercial break.